Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I'm Matt Benson, and on this episode of The Lion, the Lamb, and the Lawyer, we're going to talk about whether the world's three great monotheistic religions, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, all worship the same God. Now, I realize that this is a topic that has the potential to be kind of inflammatory, so I'm going to walk through it as deliberately as I can and explain the conclusions I came to as well as I know how. We're going to start with a quick explanation of the origins of Judaism. The beginning of Judaism is recorded in the Torah, which should be familiar to Christians because it also happens to be the first 5 books of the Old Testament. In the 12th chapter of Genesis, God shows up, makes a covenant with Abram, whose name is then changed to Abraham, and that's essentially the beginning of Judaism. Abraham's descendants grow in number, and they form both a nation and a religion. The rules governing conduct in Judaism were delivered from God to Moses and are generally referred to as either the Mosaic Code or simply the Law. The traditions of Judaism, as well as the strictures of the law, were later shaken to their core by a Jewish carpenter named Jesus. Jesus offered freedom from the rules in the Mosaic Code because he offered himself as the ultimate fulfillment of those rules, rendering them unnecessary. Instead, Jesus replaced the Jewish law with a simple pair of commandments: love your God and love your neighbor. Jesus' teachings were extremely controversial within the Jewish community. He had a very committed group of followers, but the existing religious orders, namely the Pharisees and the Jewish priesthood, saw Jesus as a threat. So they arranged to have Jesus betrayed by Judas Iscariot. He was then tried and crucified. And this is where the big break really occurs between Jews and Christians. Christians generally believe that Jesus was the Messiah, that he rose again after the crucifixion, and then later ascended to heaven to reign as Lord. Jews generally believe that Jesus died and that the Messiah has yet to come. So both Jews and Christians worship the God of Abraham, but they disagree about what that God's intentions are and how he manifests himself on the earth. Muslims also worship the God of Abraham, but they think that both Jews and Christians screwed it up. The foundational beliefs of Muslims are set forth in the Quran, which was written by the Prophet Muhammad around 600 AD. The Quran makes mention of both Christians, which it describes as having gone astray, and Jews, which it describes as having incurred the wrath of God. The Jews are viewed as having incurred God's wrath by rejecting and killing Jesus, while Christians are viewed as having gone astray by wrongfully raising Jesus to the dignity of a God. Muslims do not view Jesus as evil, but view his importance as more similar to that of a prophet like Isaiah, rather than as God in human form. They believe that the actual Messiah showed up in the form of the prophet Muhammad. So, knowing that, do Christians, Jews, and Muslims all worship the same God? The honest answer is kind of. All three religions attach themselves to the God of Abraham, but they have drastically different conceptions of who that God is and what he wants from his followers. Interestingly, the break between all three of them seems to be centered around Jesus Christ. I personally am a Christian, which is why I feel compelled to remind you of the 2 big rules of Christianity. Love your God with all you are, and love your neighbor as yourself. I started this project because if we don't know why we believe, we don't really know what we believe. If you like this video, please consider sharing it with your friends. You can find The Lion, the Lamb, and the Lawyer on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We try to put out a new video once a week. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time. I hope you got something out of it.